What is going on, you guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today's more of an update video, honestly, but we do got some parts to install on the Subaru because we've been having some issues lately. Even though we got most of them resolved, we still got one that's bugging me.
Well, before we get to that, if you guys are new to the channel and this is the first time you're seeing the engine bay of this thing and you're thinking, holy man,
that engine bay looks gnarly, she must be making some sauce. Well, she did make some sauce, and if you guys want to check it out, I'll put a link up top here to our last dyno video because she broke 500 horsepower on pump gas, baby. I'm still so pumped about that.
But in the engine bay on this thing, the number one issue I want to address here before we go to the track next week is this rad hose. I can't run my big parent alternator cover, which matches the sparkle powder coat that's on the rad shroud and all the intercooler piping and everything, because it's actually hitting my rad hose and it wore into it a little bit, sketched me out, so I haven't been running it at all this year. So we got some new parts. We finally got silicone rad hoses and the clamps that came with them. And I know everybody hates Cobb right now because of all the stuff that went on, but they had the cheapest rad hoses, so I went with theirs.
But before we get started with the rad hose install and cleaning up a couple other things on the Subaru, which I will get to in a minute, I want to give a shout out to Subi Supply Co., which this is the first time anything like this has ever happened to me, where a company has reached out and offered some support on the channel. So if you guys are Subaru owners and you guys need parts for your Subaru, Subi Supply Co. has absolutely anything and everything you need. If they don't have it on the site, shoot them a DM on Instagram and they will be able to get it for you. And if you guys are ordering parts, I'm gonna slide a little discount in for you guys too. Use the code on the bottom of the screen here, Daniel5, for 5% off your order with Subi Supply Co. That was weird. That was the first time I've ever promoted something. But now let's talk about some other big news. We started making hoodies, and these things are comfy and cool as hell. So a little bit of a backstory on this before I just kind of throw this at you guys. When I started YouTube, I always thought every YouTuber has merch, every YouTuber has a brand or something like that that they use to make money for the content that they make, whether it's cars or whatever they do. And I always thought I wanted to do it. I never think it would actually happen, but I could never come up with a name for a brand. I didn't want to sell merch to people, and me personally, if I was buying something from somebody, I wouldn't want to buy something with their name on it. So I was like, I gotta make something cool. So I was at my buddy Ethan's house, hanging out with Ethan and Colton, which you guys have seen on the channel in my first start video when we just finished this build. We were at Ethan's house hitting a jump into a dugout with some bikes, and then I was talking to Colton and Ethan, and I was like, if I made merch, what would it be? Like, we'd have to name it something cool so that people would buy our stuff. And then we were like, yeah, man, I don't know what it could be. And then I was like, I know, boys, it's gotta be something cool. And then Ethan and Colton looked at me, they're like, dude, that's it. And I was like, that's what? They're like, it's something cool. I was like, I know the name has to be something cool, but what is it? They're like, no, that's it. And I was like, oh my God, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, but that's sick. So we did it.
And this is our first drop. This hoodie right here was more of Colton's design, and this one at the start has been the best seller. I think it's the nicest one too. We got a maroon with a nice golden yellow something cool logo on it. And then the other two, you got your basic white something cool with the gray background text. And then we got a basic black hoodie with the white something cool logo and again the gray background text. And these things are so comfy. The fabric on them is amazing. If you guys want to get one of these, I don't have a website or anything yet, but I will put a link in the description to the Something Cool Instagram. You guys can DM me on there and I will get back to you guys ASAP if you guys want to get these. They're pre-order only right now.
So yeah, go buy one because they're sick. And all of the money that I make from these hoodies is going straight back into the builds. First step is boosting the Honda. Second step is making this Subaru into maybe one day a SEMA car. I want this car to be absolutely perfect one day. And I want to go to the States for a car show because I've never gone and I think it'd be a cool experience. So now that we got all that stuff out of the way and you guys can see how comfy this hoodie is, it looks so sweet. I'm so happy with them. Like I said before, go on the Something Cool Instagram, shoot me a DM if you guys want to show some support for the builds and for the channel, because maybe we could do something with this one day. And maybe one day I wouldn't have to work my 5 to 9 to be able to enjoy my 9 to 5. We'll see. I got dreams.
So let's get to fixing and installing some parts on this old girl right here. First thing we gotta do is get the front end of the car jacked up. I gotta pull the whole splash shield down off of the bottom. Then we gotta drain the coolant out of the rad, and then it should be a pretty quick, simple, easy install. Just take the hose clamps off each end of the upper rad hose and lower rad hose. And I say this is a simple install, but I guarantee I'm gonna make a mess and get coolant absolutely everywhere, because that's usually what happens when you do rad hoses. But it's gonna be worth it, so I can cover up that ugly alternator with my nice rad shroud. Please don't make a mess. Sick. There she goes. That's a good stream. All right, so now we got that coolant draining. I'm gonna go ahead and get this upper rad hose off first, just because while it's still draining, if there's still coolant coming out of there's gonna be a lot of coolant coming out of the lower rad hose. So I don't wanna make a mess on both sides. So I'm gonna let that keep draining. We're gonna start by popping off this gear clamp that I got on the Mishimoto rad here. And then I still have the factory spring clamp on the inside back there, which that spring clamp kind of sucks to get at. The best way I find without taking anything off here is to stick the pliers in between the high pressure power steering line and the low pressure line, and you can kind of squeeze it and pull it back in a couple steps. Kind of a pain, but do what you gotta do. Okay, so I got the upper rad hose on there, and I don't have any hose clamps on it yet, but I did have to trim about an inch off of the engine side of the upper rad hose, just because the way I had it before, the rad hose was still contacting the rad fan shroud here. So what I did was I cut a little bit off of the engine side of it, and that way I got lots of clearance here, and I got lots of clearance to the rad shroud. Sweet, now we're not gonna rub through anywhere. Before I get ahead of myself here and I hose clamp them on, I'm gonna go grab my Perrin little alternator cover there and see if it touches the rad hose still. I'd say we're good to go. Oh yeah, she fits mint. I did have to bend it a little bit, but you can see we got lots of clearance on that side, and we got clearance everywhere. Now we don't have to stare at an ugly alternator all the time.
Now I can get the hose clamps on this upper rad hose, get the lower rad hose on, then we can fill it back up with coolant, and I'm gonna bleed the coolant while I have the car jacked up in the air like this, just because if you guys watch my videos, you would know that I deleted my coolant expansion tank. So the highest point in my cooling system is the AOS, so I do get air bubbles in the system if I bleed it flat on the ground, unless I use a big extension on my coolant funnel, which I'm still gonna use, but it does make it easier to bleed when the front end of the car is jacked up. Lower rad hose is installed now too. I did have to trim this side also. I think I had to trim these just because the Mishimoto rad is a lot thicker than the factory rad. These hoses are made for the factory rad, so this hose, if I didn't trim it back on this side, was completely kinked here, and now she fits perfect. I pretty much cut them both on one side right at the Cobb logo. You can see on this side that the Cobb logo is right at the end of the hose, and it worked perfect. I got a lot of comments in a video where I finally got this thing running again for the second time, how I bleed the cooling system in this thing, because a lot of you guys have expansion tank deletes and stuff like that, and it's very hard to get all the air out of the system when you don't have the expansion tank. So I'll show you guys what I do. It's pretty easy, but you do need to buy a little coolant funnel kit. I have this little kit here. It's an 18-piece kit. It's got a whole bunch of adapters inside of it, and I'll show you guys how I hook it up to the rad so that it is my highest point in the cooling system. Usually sits up about here, so it's higher than the AOS and everything else. That way you can bleed all the air out of the system. So in this kit, it comes with a whole bunch of adapters, but all you need is one little extension piece. In this kit, I use the red adapter, which goes right onto the rad. Then you got this little piece that acts as your rad cap. It's just gonna go right on top of that, and you're gonna tighten it down, and that seals right to your rad. Then you're gonna take your little extension piece, shove her in there, and now you can dump all the adapters out of here because you don't need them. Then you just set the coolant funnel up in here, and boom, now you got your highest point in your cooling system. So now I'm gonna fill this up with coolant. I'm gonna reuse my old coolant just because it's got maybe 2,000 kilometers kilometers on it. So I saved it all in a clean bucket. So let's get that dumped back in here, get the car started, and blast the heat on the inside of the car to get the coolant flowing through the heater core and bleed all of the air out of the system. And check for leaks. We want to make sure those rad hoses aren't leaking, because that would suck. Look like I'm cooking up a spell here. Now let's fire her up, look for leaks, blast the heat inside.
This thing is so damn loud, but if you look from here, you can see that this is higher than my AOS. All right, I think we got all the air bled out of the cooling system now. I let it run for about 15 minutes or so. Just let it run until bubbles stop coming out of that coolant funnel. I revved it up a couple times just to give the water pump an extra kick, just to push some air out of it. And the heat was insanely hot inside, so that means all the coolant is circulated through the heater core, so that's perfect. Now, here comes the tough part with this extension piece that I use. You take this adapter here that comes with the kit and you can shove it inside, and it actually blocks off the hole to go in there, so it keeps all the coolant inside of this funnel. But the issue with this is it only blocks off to here, so all the coolant that's in this tube and on that cap stays in there and makes a mess when you take that off. So this is messy for sure. I always put a bucket under the car and I pack a whole bunch of rags around here when I take this off. So let's see if we can do this without making a huge mess. You guys have a little coolant tester. Just stick the hose in there, suck the coolant out of there, and then you can drain it back in your bucket. Sweet, you learn something new every day. Now she is filled right to the top, and we can get the rad cap put right back on there. Cobb silicone rad hose install done. Now I gotta move on to the next thing. But first, I'm gonna get that cover slapped back on the car. I already checked the rad hoses, made sure there was no leaks. So we gotta get that splash shield put back under the car, get it dropped down. Then we gotta deal with my oil control valve issue that I had. Which again, if you guys would have saw my dyno video, you would have seen that my intake OCV on the right hand side is a little bit lazy. The left side kind of picks up right away, and the right side takes until you hit full boost for it to catch up to the left side. So I think that OCV just might be on its way out. I'm gonna swap them side to side because on the 257s, I'm not sure if it's every year, but both intake OCVs are the same, so you can swap them side to side. Look at your access port monitors. If the issue follows to the other side, then you know the OCV is the issue and you don't have an electrical issue or something like that. So let's get her back on four wheels. Okay, now that we got it all back on the ground, I'll show you guys where these oil control valves are and kind of what they do. So both oil control valves sit on the side of each head. There's one right where that blue connector is right there. And then there's another one on this blue connector on the driver's side. Both those oil control valves are what controls your AVCS in the car. They are what control the oil flow to your cam gears to advance or retard timing based on what the ECU wants to do to compensate for whatever is happening with the engine, based off of what all the sensors and everything like that are telling the ECU. So if this oil control valve is getting sticky or kind of clogged up a little bit, it could maybe be moving a little bit slower in and out and opening the oil passages a little bit slower than the one on this side is. And I replaced the one on this side maybe about 15,000 kilometers ago. This one I have never replaced. So I think that one's just getting old. So what we're gonna do is take the 10 mil out on the top of each oil control valve. I gotta take this intake pipe off. Then we're gonna slide them back. Some oil might come out. And then I'm just gonna put that one in this side, put that one in that side. And then we're gonna read the values and see if it follows to the other side. And I'll show you guys what the values look like now when it's all messed up. Okay, so as you can see here on my access port, AVCS left and AVCS right. So we start it up. You'll see that they look pretty good right now. The left side's sitting at 1 degree and the right side's around that area too. If they're 1 degree off, that's pretty good. But if I rev the car up a little bit, you'll see that right side's just kind of going all over the place. The left side is the accurate one and that's where we want it to be. But if you watch the right side, It's not perfectly in sync with the left. You can see right there that it's a little bit lazy. And it tends to have to play a little bit of catch up, and then it'll go wonky and it'll come down and then come back up until it evens out. So let's go swap them side to side, and we'll see if those lazy numbers switch from the right side to the left. I figured I'd stop the time lapse here quick just to show you guys the oil control valves. This is the old one that I said is lazy, and this is the one that I replaced. You can see the valves in there that kind of open and close just to direct oil through each hole to different passes to advance or retard timing. And same with this old one that is apparently not working the way it's supposed to anymore. So I'm gonna move this one to the left side, move that one to the right side. Then we'll start the car up and see what happens. Sick, boys. This is exactly what I was hoping would happen. Now, if you watch the left side compared to the right, I have the good oil control valve on the right side now, the bad one on the left. And if I rev it up, you can see that it's the left one that's kind of all over the place now, and the right one's staying consistent. You'll see that the right one will advance first, and then the left one kind of has to play catch up, just like that. Sweet, now I just need to put a new OCV in the left side and we're good to go. Fresh new oil control valve straight from Subaru. All right, new oil control valves in. Let's see what happens. Oh, it's a new one. It probably has to learn a little bit what's going on first. There we go. Now she's learning. Look at that. Now they're almost perfectly in sync. 10 and 10, just like that, baby. Let's go. This honestly feels weird because everything went so smoothly today, and I almost had no issues other than trimming the rad hoses a little bit.
Nice. Usually that doesn't happen to me. Usually there's always something that makes it take 10 times longer than it's supposed to, but today everything went smooth. So that is where I'm gonna end the video on this one. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel because next video is gonna be an absolute banger. We are going to the track, and I got a big surprise for you guys when we go to the track too. If you guys have been watching the channel for a while and you saw my last track day video, you would know the times we run were just above 12-second quarter miles, and now we made 512 wheel and 439 torque. So are we gonna break 12s? If you guys watch the video to this point, go leave a comment down below what you think we're gonna run in a quarter mile on this thing. Whoever wins the closest guess will get a free high five because I don't have enough money to give you guys a free hoodie yet. But soon. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.